Viraja Vipapma Bhuyasagam Swaha. May my physical being be pure, and may I realize that I am the Self Absolute, free from all impurities and all bondage. Om Antaratma Me Shuddhyantam Jyotiraham Viraja Vipapma Bhuyasagam Swaha. May my psychological being be purified. I am the pure, ever free, ever perfect Divine Self. Om Paramatma Me Shuddhyantam Jyotiraham Viraja Vipapma Bhuyasagam Swaha. May my innermost soul be pure. Let me realize that I am ever perfect, ever pure, ever free Brahman, the all-pervading existence. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace. So dear friends, this is the first Sunday service after the summer break. Last Sunday we had a wonderful Universal Brotherhood Day program, and from today, every Sunday we will have, as usual, the Sunday service, the lecture on a particular theme, followed by the Arati or the Vesper service. So, normally I try to speak about the most central theme in our life, in spiritual progress, in our moral understandings, and that is truth. So, this time I have taken up the idea of truth liberates. In our life we see these two somewhat paradoxical tendencies, that tendency to get bound. We don't call it bondage, otherwise we won't go there, but it ultimately results in bondage, that we want to get into, we call therefore a bond. And sometimes to make it sound very nice, we call it a loving bond. What it basically means, after all, whatever name you may give, it's bondage. So there is the tendency to get into bondages. And then there is the opposite tendency to get liberated, to become free. And to become free is an innate tendency in all of us right from childhood. One can easily see that we want to be free. And then the question comes, if there is bondage that we cannot shake off, our very existence seems to be bound by so many things, and even the efforts that we make to get rid of the bondage somehow seems to make us get into some other bondage. So therefore it is somewhat difficult to get rid of bondage. And why do we really crave for freedom? Let the bondage be there. Why should we worry about it? Let us be bound. Let us be resigned to the fact that we are going to be bound like that, and stop worrying about it. But that doesn't happen. which indicates they have very deep uh, desire to become liberated, to become free. And the scriptures describe that this is because our true nature is free, our self is free, and that our telling ourselves that we are bound is the result of an error, result of telling ourselves untruth. So the moment we realize the truth, then we see we are liberated, we are free, we never were bound. And this is the idea that is explored in Vedanta. Not only in Vedanta means as a system of philosophy that is accepted by Hindus and coming from India. What Vedanta here means is that they are all the saintly people, sages in the world, what they sought and saw as the ultimate truth. That is what I mean here by Vedanta. So here we see this truth realized by the sages that I am divine. And we can see in Bible, in the book of John, a very celebrated statement, John 8:31-32, that so Jesus said to the Jews who believed in him, if you abide in my word, you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and truth will set you free. The truth will set us free. Being a disciple means not that you put a label that I am disciple, but you follow the teachings of your teacher, then that makes you a disciple. And just calling oneself disciple and doing whatever I want to do, that doesn't make me really a disciple. So Jesus mentions that if you abide in my word, you are truly my disciples. And you will know the truth. Because that is the experience of Jesus, that is the life of Jesus. Jesus knows the truth. And if you follow someone who is established in truth, we also will become established in truth. And thus the truth will set us all free. Because that is how we know the truth, that we are ever free. Now this is a journey. This is not that we will, at this moment itself, we have to or we will realize the truth. We may, but it is not guaranteed. We may have to go through certain processes which will help us to get rid of ignorance and thus bring us closer and closer to the truth. So, we can see three different levels of truth, and thus three different levels of liberation also that these three levels of truth gave. That first is the contextual truth, that it is, in a context it is true. It is for example, we will, from here we see, if we look at the skies and see moon, and we will say that yes, I am down here, moon is up there in the sky. But if you go to moon, the reality will look completely different. You will say, I am down on moon, the earth is up there. So there the up and down, that is determined by the context, that in a particular context those things are true. It is in this context, yes, if you are asked, where are you? You may say, I am at Vedanta Society. But again, if the context is that of the mind, The mind may not be here, the mind may be wandering at all different places. So, physically, yes, you can say that I am at Vedanta Society. Mentally, well, depends. So, it is where we are in the context, the answers are to be, decided. It is like windows. These are the windows, and then the Microsoft window is another thing. In the context, the meaning changes. So, truth that is limited to a given context, that it is that I fix windows means a computer, this thing, a software engineer also can say that, and another person who does the construction work also can say that I fix windows. So it is, it depends on the context, that what exactly is the meaning of the word, and adhering to that, the contextual truth. So therefore, if we are not knowing the contextual truth, then there is the bondage associated with it. It is like if you start thinking, imagine, you won't do that, but if you imagine right now, and sometimes the imagine becomes very strong, that you are in the street of New York, not at Vedanta Society. So, and if you refuse to accept the contextual truth that you are at Vedanta Society, and then you will be in a way bound by that, that you will not be able to be in New York, nor you will be able to be in Vedanta Society, because you are not accepting the contextual truth. So contextual truth, acceptance of that is the first step. And that what it means is that speaking the truth as per context, that sticking to the contextual truth, that it is, if you say here that I live in East Coast, and then for most of us it will be a true statement that given the American context, yes, we are on the East Coast. So that will be a true statement. If you say, I am on the West Coast, it will be a false statement, that you are not telling the right thing. You are trying to mislead somebody. And it is, if you go to Florida, Florida itself has two coasts, East Coast and West Coast. So therefore there the statements, in a general whole American context, it is still East, but within Florida then there is the East Coast and the West Coast too. So it is, if you speak according to the context, the relative truth, then that is what is giving you the freedom. And why? Because then you feel morally strong. If we do not speak the truth according to the context, then we are cheating somebody, but more importantly, we cheat ourselves. Our conscience starts pricking, and that creates a bondage, the sense of guilt. For many people, the sense of guilt, it's a big psychological problem. The feeling that, oh, I have done something wrong, I have done something bad, I have deceived somebody. That person gets deceived, but more problematic is the case of the person who tells the lie, because that lie binds that person by the sense of guilt. So therefore, if we practice speaking the truth according to context, if we are honest, basically that is what is called honesty, that if we are honest, then the things set us free at that level. it is very important to be contextually true, uh, so that that is the first step. We, whatever is my perception, to that perception I tune my words, my behavior. That is one thing. But at the same time, even though our perception is something, we are somehow or other aware of the ultimate truth. It is, even if we deny it, we still cannot shake off that notion of what is commonly called as God or the Absolute or the truth beyond all names and forms. We can never shake it off, that because the existence of the relative always depends on the existence of the Absolute. It is somehow or other that is beckoning us all the time, even when we outwardly say that I am an atheist, I am not believer in God, but that also is a statement that is only relatively true. That person, it becomes, such a thing gradually, that belief in atheism, I believe in atheism, that atheism word almost becomes like God. It is, there are atheist churches, it is, imagine that, they, because we are atheists, it forms a group. So our meeting place, our particular times, our head of our group and all that, who is the best amongst us, that is. So atheism also starts becoming like a religion, and the God is like that. So we always see that something is beyond all limitations that we are perceiving. We are perceiving limitations. We are perceiving the reality only in context and in relation. But we become aware of that which is supreme, that is beyond all these bondages, that controls everything, and as the whole controls the parts. In that sense, we understand that, like the microbes in this body. Now, if I go and sit there, then those microbes don't have much choice, No, 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 I want to be well. It is, they also have to move. So the whole always controls the part and is the reality of the parts. So it is, therefore we have some idea of the God or the Absolute, and we somehow feel our notion of God always includes that God is all powerful. And what I cannot do, I have bondage, I am limited. I can only do this much. I can run at this particular speed and not more than that. I can lift this much weight, not more than that. But God does not have such limitations. And that is the idea, God beyond all limitations, free. And thus we set our life and somehow want to tune it to God. And that becomes a standard by which we start judging our actions, our emotions, whether something is right or not. We somehow have the idea of God. And this is another particular trait in human beings, that we seek the advice of the experts in anything. This is not found in any other animals. I mean, you don't see that the dogs, they have their dog doctor. We have to take them to human vet, you see. It is not that some dogs themselves get the medical degree and then start treating the other dogs. No, they don't have their own schools, their own expert people, expert in their species. So it is human nature, a human speciality to consult others to get the knowledge of certain things, and go accordingly. Because I do not know everything, but that fellow knows. And thus we consult sages for a better understanding of God. And the words of sages, we it is that is what is called in Vedanta the scriptures. In Abrahamic tradition, scripture word is reserved only for Bible. Only for that the word scripture is reserved, and for Muslims it is Quran is the scripture. But otherwise for Jewish and for Christians it is the particular one set of that teachings that alone forms the scripture. But Hindus, they understand that whosoever has realized, experienced the ultimate truth, the words of that person can become guide to us, and thus they form the scriptures. So we consult them and thus try to get a sense of what that God is like. But that still is my understanding, how I understand God. And thus that understanding of the absolute, it is not absolute that the person understands, but my concept of absolute, my understanding of absolute, my, you can say, experience of absolute that I am feeling. So this is again a limited thing, but limited understanding of the unlimited. That is how one can understand it. And thus it brings a relative freedom that as we journey towards our understanding of God, to that God we make the journey. And our understanding, our concepts start getting clearer and clearer and clearer. It is like I have an understanding of a place by reading some books or consulting some people, that yes, there is a very good place to go and see African safari. I have an understanding of it. I have seen pictures of it. I have spoken to people who had gone there, and then I form an idea. But then as I go closer, then I start getting a better idea of it, what it is, how it is. And when I am right there, then my idea becomes an experience which could be very different from the idea that I had formed. One forms an idea, but actual experience transcends that idea. Before I went to the Himalayan hills, of course I had read a lot about it and seen pictures, descriptions, and thought that, well, now I can visualize. But when I went, and when the first glimpse of the snow-clad peaks, it was very much more than what I had imagined, much more than what I had thought. And that was how, when we come to the truth, it happens like that. And according to that level of understanding, the level of the truth that I am realizing, experiencing, I will feel liberated also. This word liberation or freedom, in Sanskrit it is called mukti. Mukti. And so the one who wants liberation, seeks liberation, there is a beautiful word for that, mumukshu. Mumukshu means the one who is desirous of mukti or liberation. But our idea of liberation, therefore, changes according to our understanding of the Absolute and our connection with it. So, therefore, there are four types of liberations that is told. That one is called Salokya. Means, see, you will stay in heaven where God lives. Certain different types of heavens described according to the particular idea, particular deity that you think as your understanding of God. So you imagine like those who worship God as Vishnu, and they would call it Vaikuntha. That so I will stay in Vaikuntha. It is there is God there, and I will stay there. Those who are worshippers of Shiva, they will call it Kailasa. That I will go to Kailasa, a place where God lives, and so I will be in the same region where God is. And God and I, we are living in the same township. That is freedom, that okay, it is. Our name of our city here is so good, Providence. Always we are with God because we are in Providence. So it is, that is one type of this liberation. Salokya, in the same level as God is. Not that I am meeting God every moment, but I am under that God, I am living in the same domain. So you feel a sense of freedom, sense of being protected by God and so forth. Then there is another mukti, another form of liberation, not only in the same location, but close, in the same building maybe. God and I, we not only live in this same country, but actually in the same building, Samipya, close by. We live close by, God and I. We often see each other going in and going out. We meet each other like neighbors, So that idea one gets that is another type of liberation. In both these cases, you will see that this world of gross physical senses has been transcended already. There is no bondage due to our physical existence and so forth. So there is that sense of freedom. But it is still, there is a level there too, that there is a philosophy that you cannot really go too close to God. God is, you say, supreme. Only certain very elevated sages get the good fortune to go near God and sit near God. But this is enough for you to be in the same town as God is, Salokya. And that is the idea that is even preached by many, that this is up to this you can do. You can get a permanent condo in Vaikuntha. So that, or Kailasa or whatever, that is the level of liberation that you can, as a human being, you can aspire only up to that. Occasionally maybe you can get to see God, but very rare. You live in the same township, that's good enough. Then this is the Samipya. You are almost on an hourly basis you are meeting God. Every now and then you can see God because you are close by. Then there is at this level again there is the sense of liberation, a higher sense of liberation. It is you are not touched by anything in the even in the divine that town. You are not looking at any other attraction but only God, because you are always with God. What more do you want? So that is the being close to God. Then there is the third one called Sayujya. Oh no, there is one more, Sarupya. You become so close that your form also resembles that of God. You become like God. You look like God. Sarupya means that the form of you and the form of God. Not only you look close, but there is not much to distinguish between you and God. Sarupya. That you have the same, although you are two like twins, look alike, but they are different. It is very confusing for those who do not know exactly what to look for. They look alike, and so you call one by other name and so forth. So it is, I used to tell twins used to come at our center there in Nagpur. So you would tell them right beforehand that please you tell me who is who. It is because you look alike, Sarupya. So you look like God, there is not much to distinguish, but there is still separateness, you are not same. And the fourth is Sayujya. There is no distinction. You realize your divinity. So that is the highest level of liberation, highest mukti. So these four types of muktis are told, and it is depends on how one's idea of God is. It is the evolution that happens in our awareness and our connection with God. And the first idea is God is there, far there somewhere, and he doesn't seem to interfere much with our affairs. So I can do many things as I like. I don't have to be always aware that the God is watching. It is because how many people can God watch simultaneously? So I had told that joke earlier here that in a school goodies were kept for kids, and then a sign was written, just the teacher wrote the signboard so that the children should not grab everything. That is the tendency. Here we had some kids coming, and then our Joan had kept a box of Oreo cookies. And then normally for 6-7 kids, how many will they take? We thought a dozen were thought to be enough. But no, they were gone in a jiffy, because they were not taking like this, they were taking like this. So it is, so the teacher wrote a sign where their apples were kept. So the teacher wrote, take just one, God is watching. And a mischievous kid wrote a sign where the cookies were kept. Take as many, God busy watching apples. So it is, we imagine that, well, that God is far there somewhere. How much can he pay attention to? So I can take some liberties. It is, that is another way that we use the word, and that is a very common usage. That is how in religious and social parlors the word this liberty is used. Liberals or liberty means freedom from religion. That we are not bound by any religious idea. Freedom from religion, that is what is called liberal. So liberalism and all such words indicate that we are not bound by any religious dogma per se. So, as one develops a stronger connection with God, then our understanding evolves, and we start feeling more and more liberated. The bondages, they have also, the levels, like the bondage due to identification with body. I am body, and which is generally the awareness of almost all of us. Very difficult to shake off this awareness. I am body. And this identification with a lump of flesh, you see, and that is the main bondage that we are now conscious of. But if we contemplate and reach the level of awareness to see that we are not bodies, it is seeing the truth. We are not bodies, actually speaking. One can very easily understand this truth intellectually. I am not body. Because the body is all the material that is seen. I am seeing the body like I am seeing the microphone. So the body is seen, an object, and not the self. It changes all the time. It is therefore it cannot be the self. You can have lot of more reasoning. I am not going to go into it, but you can see intellectually it is possible to understand that I am not body. But then one has to concentrate on this truth, contemplate on it, try to hold on to it. And to the extent we can hold on to it, you can see most of the bondages that we are feeling right now, they vanish like anything, as if they were not there. In our language it is said that just as the horns on the head of a hare are gone, horns on the hare doesn't have horns, only the ears look like horns. So it is when you look closely, then you see that they are not horns, they are ears. So were they horns earlier and then instead of horn the hare immediately substituted ears there? That is not what we see. We see that the horns were never there, it was a misunderstanding. So similarly, when we shake off this understanding that we are body, just look, all the problems because of age are gone. That I am young, I am old, I am very old, all those ideas, and how much time and energy, how much of our worries are because of that body. I am not rich or poor. It is the body that needs money and such things. So if I know that I am not body, my worries about that, they will go away instantaneously. That bondage will fall off instantaneously. And it is only because of body that I feel the gender and sexuality issues. They are limited to body. That it is body, the bondage, this misunderstanding that I am body puts me under so many bondages. Just know this truth and see how much relief one can feel. That it is, sometimes I tell this as a meditation to undertake, that just as you are putting on a heavy coat in winter and as you come inside the warm house, then you unbutton the coat and hang it. So try to unbutton the body also and hang it. Feel that you are not the body. And see all these limitations, all these bondages, they instantaneously drop, they become meaningless. So it is like seeing that you are not a particular thing that you thought you are, it is gone. It is so similarly, it is like that. It is in movie somebody is acting, and then in the movie that fellow is put in shackles, is chained. Now the person who is the same actor is watching the movie. Does that actor see that I am put in the chains? No. That is, I am not that. He knows that I am that only in movie. I am not actually that. So our awareness that I am not the body, I am working through the body. That is a good idea, much evolved idea that I am working through the body, but I am not the body. That makes us free to such a great extent. Then comes the next level of our mental being, that we are identified with our mental states also. But when you realize that they are mental states, that is not really what you are, then you become free of that too. And thus you realize the freedom, and that you realize in the sense you are always free. But the ignorance was causing this limitation, this bondage. And thus, when the truth is known, that knowledge makes us free to the extent we know the truth. And this is described very beautifully in Taittiriya Upanishad, that a student goes to the teacher. In that case, particular case, the teacher is his father, and asks him to teach about the supreme reality, the Brahman or the God, whatever one may call. So he asked, teach me that. And the teacher replied that, well, know that as from which this whole existence springs up, in which this whole existence kind of resides, and in which it dissolves. That is Brahman. Yato va imani bhutani jayante yena jatani jivanti yat prayanta visamvishanti tad brahma tad vijijñāsasva. That is to be realized, that is to be known, the source of everything, the rising of this, all these forms come from that where and where they subsist and where they dissolve. That is divine. And know this through purification. And the word, Sanskrit word used there is tapas. Tapas means purification. It really, word meaning is heating. But heating means in this context like purification. So it is like you heat water to kill the germs, to purify it. So heat your psychic being means purify it, and thus you will see the truth. And that person, that disciple then goes into solitude and performs austerities, purifies, and then after one layer of purification, that layer of physical being is discarded. He realizes that I am not that. So he comes and declares that to teacher. Teacher says, wonderful, wonderful, great job, but continue, don't stop here. And then he keeps on doing 5 sheets that are described in Vedanta philosophy. 5 sheets, one after other, they were gradually discarded. And thus now this person, this disciple realizes that freedom, sees that I am always liberated. The sign of liberation is that now I, that a bound person sees in a limited psychophysical personality. I am so and so, I am 5 feet tall or 6 feet tall, and I weigh 170 pounds, or all those ideas. I am so many years old, these are my parents, these are my siblings, these are my friends, and those, they are my enemies, and all that. So it is those ideas, uh, they are gone. I am in everything, the same self in all different bodies. That is that level of freedom. So he declares, Yaschayam Purushe Yascha Sau Aditye Sa Ekaha. A very sublime verse, that the one who is felt here in this body, and the one who is seen in the sun. Now sun is so big and this is so small, but that is, the self is the same. The self is not caught in that body. Body may be small or big. It is similar realization, that analogy is given in Vedanta pretty often, and that is, suppose you have say 100 pots filled with water, and in the noontime sun, those pots are kept out, and every pot will have a reflection of sun. Every pot will have a sun. Now, the pot may be big or small. The water in each pot, some pot may have the water turbulent, some may have calm. In some it may be somewhat muddied, as in some it may be very clear. Now the sun is reflected in all. Is the sun affected by the condition of the pot or the water? No, the sun is the same one sun in all pots. Just reflect this analogy. Think of ourselves as these pots. As pots, as body and mind, each of us is different. But this self, I, in each pot is one and the same, and that is freedom. That knowing this is liberation. Because of identification with body or mind, I see I am bound by it. But the sun is never bound by the pot. I am never bound by these limitations at all. These limitations pertain only to the pot and not to me. And thus you realize the liberation. Now comes a little more practical aspect of it, and a great text of non-dual Vedanta tells about it. The name of the text is Ashtavakra Sanhita, and the name of the teacher there is Ashtavakra. I am not going into the anecdote how he got the name, but he was very wise and was in the court of Janaka, the king, and then was giving advice to the Janaka. Janaka asked this question, that how one attains to liberation. Katham jnanam avapnoti, katham muktir bhavishyati, vairagyam cha katham praptam, etad bruhi mama prabho. A very beautiful verse describing that this King Janaka already was aware that it is the ignorance that is creating bondage. And so he asks, how do I get the knowledge? And thus I will get liberated. He also understands that for this purpose I will have to develop dispassion about the things around, because I get caught in them, intensifying the bondage further. So I have to develop that sense of dispassion, vairagya. And tell me, how do we get this? And Ashtavakra there, instead of giving big philosophy about the all-pervading self everywhere and all that, gives the most practical advice, very important for us, that muktim ichhasi chet tata. If you really are desirous of mukti, liberation, then what you are to do? Vishayan vishavatyaja. All the so-called objects of enjoyment, and discard them, give them up as poison. See, this is a complete reversal of our brain chemistry. It is very different from the common practice. When we see an object of enjoyment, we go to grab it. Now we have to reverse this brain chemistry. Then you learn to refrain from it. It is because what you see as an object of enjoyment, you see that you get caught by it. It is like a trap. In a trap, when you want to set a trap for a mouse, then you keep something attractive, that the mouse will come. So all these objects of enjoyment, they are traps. And what happens? You get bound in the trap. So if you want liberation, if you want freedom, and we all want, is it not? Is there anybody who says, no, no, I don't want? All of us want liberation. So what is to be done? Vishayan vishavatyaja. And give up these attractive sense objects. Do not go after them. Think of them as poison. That is what it is going to do to you. So therefore think of it as it is. Again, that is seeing the truth, that they are really traps. Do not think of them as object of enjoyment, but as a trap. And so you will not get into it. And what then? You have to practice another thing, positive thing, and that is Kshama, Arjava, Daya, Tosha, Satyam, Piyushavad Bhaja. That practice compassion, practice forgiveness, practice modesty, and practice the sense of contentment, practice speaking the truth. That is Piyushavad Bhaja. Practice that as it is nectar. Try to take it in as the nectar. That is how this is to be practiced. And thus we will actually march towards liberation. We will march towards freedom. It is most practical something. If there is the desire for freedom, then there is obviously, clearly, surely, there is the way to realize freedom too. There is, it is only we have to guide our lives properly. And here this way is given. Let us pray that we get the strength to walk on this path and get the cherished freedom, cherished liberation. Thank you, friends. Any questions? Yes, please. Oh, well, it depends again, that as we discuss it, we will have our mental projections about it. But it is beyond all mental constructs and projects, so it is not with forms or with particulars. But that doesn't mean that it is inclusive of all particulars. That is what we have to say. it is beyond all concepts. So that is what, because you are now one with God. If you accept that state of yours as with different forms, then you will see God also with those limitations.